Prosecution, would you like to state your closing statement, please?
Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we came here to represent the people of California whose access to a sufficient higher education has been limited and prevents them from fulfilling the American dream. In the past days, there's been many points made. We discussed how colleges in California, mainly focusing on UCs and CSUs, are undoubtedly proficient in provide sufficient quality in the education they have to offer, giving valuable educations that create opportunities for those students. And evidence such as the testimonies from Alejandra Duarte have shown how although UCs and CSUs do provide a quality education, they are generally limited to those who can either afford it or who are proficient in the A to G requirements, which are unknown to most students. Community colleges have been brought up in the case. Although the accessibility of that education has been shown, the effectiveness and quality for them has failed to be vouched for. The charge is on accessibility, something we need to remember, to a quality higher education. The prosecution has not doubted that the quality and opportunity within higher education in California is there, with the exception of community colleges. Meaning that we do acknowledge that the fact that UCs and CSUs do have amazing opportunities for those students when they qualify for handling extremely high tuition prices. The charge is, you have heard from the trusting James Truslow Adams that the American dream is one that is the dream, quote, is the dream of a land in which life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone, with opportunity for each according to ability or achievement. And that each man and each woman shall be able to obtain the fullest stature of which they are innately capable and be recognized by others for what they are, regardless of the fortunate circumstances of birth or position. Which then we are left with the question, is it right to determine the quality of a person's education based off of how much they can afford? Which is what has been shown through our evidence, that community colleges is usually the option for those who cannot afford universities. We have presented evidence through cross-examination that more money is spent on prisoners than our own students. Our own students. The people who will one day run the cities, run the states, and run our country. Not only have we seen the amount that is invested in the people of our future, but we have seen how many students that are forced to drop out because of their economical disadvantages. We have established that the access to college begins and is affected if you are struggling financially. And then they lose their chance to a higher education at the start of high school. The state of California is guilty of limiting access to the people to achieve the American dream in obtaining, quote, a life that should be better and richer, fuller for everyone. Once again, there's no doubt in the quality, but the charge is on the access to these colleges. And the ones that are accessible, the quality of those. These are the leaders of tomorrow that are being denied from their full potential. Thank you.
Defense, would you make your opening statement? Any closing statement?
Throughout this trial, both the defense and the prosecution have unveiled a lot of content about California's higher education. We have learned that there are several opportunities for access to higher education. We have discovered various ways California plans and works to evolve funding for universities. And most importantly, we have acquired that the American dream consists of many dreams for the variety of citizens in California. Because of these various dreams, we are able to conclude that the concept of sufficient higher education must have more than one type of school as its answer. The defense consisted of 3 witnesses by the names of Richard Blum, Jerry Brown, and Nancy Yarborough. Our first witness, Richard Blum, explained a lot about the idea of diversity throughout the UC schools. He explained that the variety of students and incomes do not represent a violation of the spirit of the American dream. On the contrary, he explained how the variety of students and incomes support the idea that everyone can go to UC rather than just the middle class or the wealthy. He also used the California Master Plan to represent the different types of funding that will be used for higher education. He continued on, telling us about community colleges and the large percentages of occupations and transfer students that derive from these colleges. He showed how the will and diligence of a student can lead to the various opportunities available with community colleges, UCs, and CSUs. Our second witness, Jerry Brown, elaborated on the funding for higher education because of the California Master Plan. He explained Proposition 30 and how the money from this proposition would benefit colleges, especially community colleges. He also discussed the amount of organizations and companies that are associated with many colleges throughout California, such as NASA with the JPL program associated with Caltech. These companies collaborating with various colleges in California successfully represents the quality of California's higher education. Nancy Yarborough, our final witness, made some very important arguments about scholarships and financial aid. She explained the opportunities available from the various amounts of financial aid, scholarship, and loan programs. She also made a very important point with the AB 540, which is a document about the qualifications for undocumented students applying to some form of higher education and how they can make sure they are eligible for financial aid or other assistance. Throughout her questioning, it was shown that opportunities are available for any race, financial status, or other stereotypes that a student may identify with. On the prosecution, we had witnesses James Tressel Adams, Thomas Friedman, and Alejandro Goyarte. Throughout this trial, we have heard the famous quote about the American dream from James Tressel Adams reiterated many times. As you all know, he explains that birth circumstances should not affect a person's access to the American dream. With the various opportunities in community colleges, financial aid, scholarships, loans, and grants, it becomes clear that your birth circumstances do not in any way affect the spirit, or do not affect your access to the spirit of the American dream, especially through access to sufficient higher education. Evidence such as the diversity in California does prove that this is not a legend or a myth, but the reality of higher education throughout the state. Thomas Friedman shared some very important information with us throughout this trial as the prosecution's second witness. He could not deny the quality of California's higher education. He testified that the UC schools are even a model for the country. While he believes that the accessibility of these colleges is not sufficient, community colleges do bridge that gap, and on the contrary, the diversity in UCs and CSUs does prove the access to the variety of citizens is indeed sufficient. The prosecution's final witness was Alejandra Goyarte. Rather than talking about higher education, she focused on the idea of eligibility to these colleges and the high school credits you need to have to apply for UCs and CSUs. However, this trial is not directed at high schools and their violation of insufficient access, or their college advisor programs and planning, but rather the foundation of higher education as a whole, including community colleges and universities. She did not have very much information about the financial aid or loan opportunities for students and how this affects accessibility to these universities. If we compare her arguments with the arguments of a witness on the defense, Richard Blum, we find that the diversity in UCs and CSUs prove that high schools and areas, even of low income, do have students that were able to work hard for an opportunity at these universities. These charges about the violation of the spirit of the American dream through access to sufficient education have been proven not true in several arguments with several credible pieces of evidence. Expert opinions from our witnesses on the defense have proven the same. There are so many opportunities for students, even undocumented or disabled students, to apply for college and even be assisted in their applications. Students can apply for so many different things such as financial aid, scholarships, and loans. Community colleges have also been a vital part of this sufficient higher education, providing the majority of many in the local workforces. All of these opportunities have proven the accessibility of higher education. As the defense, we hope that we have been able to supply you with witnesses and evidence that elucidate the wide range of opportunities available for a quality education throughout the state of California. So ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I ask that during your deliberation you will consider the arguments and evidence throughout this trial, and you will find that the state of California is not guilty. I appreciate your time and care as you have assisted the enforcement of justice in this trial, and in addition, you have served your duty as students at High Tech High. Thank you.
All right, give them a 5-minute recess so we can just reset up the room.
All right, 5-minute recess.